Congressman McCotter very well represents Michigan's 11th district. You have a brief bio of Congressman McCotter in your program, and you can all read, so I'm not going to reread it for you. He is presently the chairman of the House Republican Policy Committee, and for those of you who are aware of the structure of the U.S. House of Representatives, you know that that's one of the most important committees in the Congress. These are the people that set the policy for the Republicans. I thought it was so interesting. Had I known of Congressman McCotter's talents, I wouldn't have let him in the door without his guitar. Because in December 2005, Congressman McCotter joined with several other congressmen to form the Second Amendments, a bipartisan rock country band set to play for the United States troops stationed overseas during the holiday season. So he gives up his free time. He plays the lead guitar. In 2006, his band played for President Bush's picnic at the White House, where Bush called Congressman McCotter the rock and roll dude. Congressman McCotter says that he was elected the chairman of the House Policy Committee because that's where all the bald people sit. So that is from his own statement. And there is one other person I do want to salute, and that's Pat Parker. Pat is the president of the Maryland Federation of Republican Women. She is here with us, and we are delighted to have her. So the congressman has been gracious enough to say, y'all can eat while I talk. Congressman Thaddeus McCotter.
Thank you very much. If you're wondering why I don't mind talking while you're eating, my wife had 14 brothers and sisters. If you're wondering why I don't mind if you eat while I talk, my wife has 14 brothers and sisters. Yeah, oh yeah. And so what would happen is every Thanksgiving, they did not mind eating while I was talking. So this is nothing new. In fact, this is actually a nice change from our family Thanksgivings with the in-laws, because there will be an absence of profanity and violence here. So I thank you in advance for that. A lot of you might be wondering why a congressman from Michigan is coming to address you here in Maryland. Well, as you may have noticed, Congress has an approval rating of 86%, disapproval. 86% of the country disapproves of the job Congress is doing, which I believe is from a poll with a margin of error of 14%. And so the invitation to come and spend some time with you was as quickly as accepted as it was rare. So I thank you for having me. What I'd like to do is, rather than give a long speech, which I know some of you might be dreading, including myself, what I would like to do is take your questions on the issues that you think are important. As you know, you are the sovereign citizens of our free republic. And one of the lessons that is often lost upon your politicians in Washington is that they work for you. That in America, Congress does not dictate to the American people. The American people dictate to Congress. So for me to come as a representative from Michigan into Maryland and start to tell you what I think is important seems to me to be absolutely backwards. And so I'd like to hear from you on the issues of national importance. I caution there are no bad questions. There will only be bad answers from me. So it's a relatively risk-free undertaking in which I ask you to engage. You must have questions. Don't tell me the Republican women of Arundel County have no questions. Your husbands will refute that. Well, the question is about Congressman Sarbanes and the chance to unseat them. It is my belief, as we sadly learned as a Republican Party back in 2006, is that no matter how entrenched you believe yourself to be, if you do not meet the wishes of your constituents and the American people, you will be unseated. But that goes to the larger question of what is the Republican Party in the House, where I serve, obviously, or in the Senate, what are they doing? One of the questions I got right when I walked in the door is, what is the Republican Party doing to reestablish their brand? I must admit to a pet peeve with this. Products have a brand. The Republican Party is not a marketed commodity. The Republican Party must be a transformational political movement. We're not a product that can be put upon a shelf and you change the label and people will be attracted to it regardless of the substance inside. And it has always been my conviction from growing up in a household with a mother who was a Republican and a father who was a Democrat. The reason that I became a Republican was I saw that Jimmy Carter didn't work and Ronald Reagan did. And I also saw that my Democratic father gritted his dentures and voted for Ronald Reagan in 1980 for precisely that reason. The legacy that we squandered from Ronald Reagan has to be restored within the Republican Party and again offered to the American people so that we can regain their trust to govern in this time of national crisis. What I believe that we learned from Ronald Reagan, and many of my colleagues believe, in fact, what really many of them are remembering, because they believed it from the beginning, Ronald Reagan understood the concept of American exceptionalism, that America does not exist to emulate other nations. America exists to inspire the world. And American exceptionalism starts from the foundational principle of liberty. It is from this foundational principle of liberty that the pillars of American exceptionalism rise: sovereignty, prosperity, security, and truth. This is what our party has to remember. This is what our party has to rededicate itself to. Now, I say this in terms of the party in Washington because I know that you've always understood this, and you've always been devoted to the cause of perpetuating the Republican Party as a transformational political movement for the benefit of our nation and, yes, the world. So that's why it's an honor to be here with you. But how this next election proceeds, and whether or not our party is again entrusted to govern as a congressional majority and in the Oval Office, is going to depend on how we reaffirm our commitment to these core principles and put forward a plan to preserve and promote American exceptionalism. I am optimistic in one regard, as optimistic as an Irish Catholic can be, is we heard the word speaker earlier. There are people like John Boehner that I'll be supporting for speaker because the party of Speaker Pelosi does not believe in American exceptionalism. The party in power in Washington right now, in a time of war, in a time of national crisis, believes America exists to emulate Western Europe. I believe that the American people, when they fully realize this, will reject that notion of American emulation of Western Europe and will again reassert the principle that we have a responsibility as the seminal revolutionary movement for freedom, which is the United States, to take our message to the world. And we as Republicans especially must remember that. We are the party of the great emancipator. I know you're a border state, so I'm a little safer saying this here than I might be south of the Mason-Dixon and other places. But we are the party of Abraham Lincoln. And just as Abraham Lincoln understood the emancipation imperative of our party was to free an entire race of people to their God-given rights, we must also understand that we have a responsibility to emancipate the American people from the shackles of oppressive government. and that we must also emancipate our fellow human beings if we are indeed to preserve our own liberty. If we can do this, I believe that we will restore the Republican Revolution.